What if the statistics were the same regardless of the age group? Oh, shit. What would you want your daughter to do?
To make the smart choice.
Which is
what?
It's not my choice. This is what I've already figured out. My job in all of it is to help her pick the right guy. That is my job, is to vet that dude. Mm-hmm. After that, it's up to her to make whatever decision and choice she's gonna make. And so far, if I hadn't agreed with if I ain't like, nah, not that guy, not that kid, she's like, okay, and she says goodbye to that kid. And I didn't say goodbye to this one. I was skeptical at first, but the more I'm around the kid, the more I get a clearer understanding of who he is and what his direction in life is and what he wants to do. And I think that is the job of the dad, is to make sure that you always give that, and that she, from there, it's up to her to choose that guy or not choose that guy, and then it's up to him to ask if you will, right. And then it's up to her to say yes, I will. So I think that is it's up to her to make the decisions as an adult at the end of the day.
Yeah, but you asked a question, so I was just curious. Like,
yeah, no,
because you asked about the statistics. I'm like, well, what if they were the same? Then what?
They're not. It wouldn't. Yeah. I don't think it would really change my approach. I just think that if there is the possibility of that Disney kind of relationship happening, what I was curious of what the statistics say of them lasting, or do they end like everything else? Right? I was just curious.
I would not look at statistics, bro. Because it's blaringly obvious for this case. I'm sorry. I do look at stats for other things. I'm sorry. I would not look at it in this case, especially in this country, because it's all inconclusive, simply because people are unprepared for the things that they're taking on in this country. People are trying things out. People are doing things impulsively. And one of the things that I realized, America has no culture. None. People just do things willy-nilly. It has no culture. So take an established culture in which 18-year-olds are getting married, and you'll have a completely different outcome. You put them under religion. You bring it is common strategy for girls to bring their boyfriends home. Yes, you can take me out. Come meet my father. All of that. Let that start happening, and we can start, swearing, betting that they'll stay together. But in this country, people just do whatever they want. And that's why these numbers are all over the place.
Well,
I will have a separate question for you guys after we do the super chats and get to that, right. Because I have the opposite end of the spectrum happening with my son. So
I was going to ask you, there was something that you said that stuck out to me, because you were saying, what should I, tell her or what have you. One of the things that I wish, and in terms of conversation with my parents, to get it from my mom and dad, because I'm hearing a lot of it in this space about women not having standards, women not having boundaries. I think, honestly, that's the focus that you should have with her, because just in case if this relationship does not work out, she has a better sense of what it is she should be looking for. I think women along the way, we figure that out after being in relationships. And then we say, ooh, I know I don't want that next time, where we don't have those boundaries. We don't necessarily have that standard initially. We learn it as we go along, where I think if my parents had spoke to me more so about that, about figuring out, some things in myself about what I think I would want in a mate. Like, what are some things that I need to be looking for that is in alignment with what I said that I wanted? So I think that should kind of be a conversation that you can have with her. Like, if you choose a husband, or what is it that you like about, whatever his name is, what are some characteristics that you can appreciate, like those things. So then that way, like, what are your limitations? What won't you accept from, any guy? We don't have those conversations as young women. We learn that after we have been in bad relationships, or even good relationships that may not have worked out.
I would also.
And
Go ahead, Coach K.
sorry, I'm trying to be quick. If you guys,
No, go ahead.
I'll say it back. No, okay, I'll say it back. But anyway, I was gonna say, and also our country is more secular than it's ever been too. So the culture, the Western culture, American culture, whatever, doesn't even have standards coming from that either, and that is rooted in, or at least directly connected to, just the decline of family, just well-being, just all types of stuff. And when you don't have that, everyone's just doing whatever the heck they want. And I put in the chat, we all have so much freedom and so many opportunities, which is great, obviously, especially for the women and for, all the groups, whatever. But if you don't have those standards, like Miss Taken is saying, or if you don't have that discipline, then you're going to do whatever you want in whatever feels good, which is, of course, we're wired to do that, to survive, to, be safe and feel comfortable. But that's not helping us anymore, because being safe and comfortable is sitting on the couch and playing on TikTok, That's all I had to say.
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
Like my parents growing up, the only conversations we had in regards to certain things, again, we grew up in a church, and it was more along the lines of, don't have sex before you get married. Well, why? God said not to. You know what I'm saying? So that was the level of conversation in terms of relationship. We just knew that we were supposed to get married. We knew that we weren't supposed to have sex before we got married. Now, did that actually happen that way? No. So I think the better conversation would have been around, like, in growing up, in terms of the biblical aspects, like, since we grew up in the church, the biblical aspects of what we should be looking for when we have a boyfriend, or what, when we have a husband, those kind of things. And we didn't. We just knew, we were just told not to have sex. And, well, if you have sex, you need to be married, and not necessarily relationship talk. And so that's what I'm saying.
And it's so funny. Let me just say this real fast. It's so funny that you say that, because I was thinking this in the hallways of my school, and how they come in. Because in my school, there are ninth graders there, and these ninth graders are sexually active. Majority of them did not. Okay? If you can hear the conversation, if you just stand and you just listen to the words that come out of their mouths, and you're like, and how old are you? 14. I wasn't even thinking of that at 13. 14, it is younger and younger. And I think about what you just said, Miss Dick, and we grew up with a foundation. Like, you went to church on Sundays. You were told, even if it was just like, just don't do it, you had a fear of God, There were just some things you fear. And so you're like, oh, well, I won't do that. I'll stay away from it for a little bit. And these kids don't have any of that. None of that. And they're starting out so young. But we're talking about, that's in high school. But I've heard stories about
middle school. Well, actually, I'm going to be honest. When I first started teaching, I was in elementary, and they were having sex in elementary. Like, we had elementary where I was at was from K to 6th grade. So we had to stand in a hallway because they were in the stairwells and stuff. So we had to monitor that. So honestly, they're starting in like in elementary. I kid you not.
If you want to know about your child, ask a teacher. We spend more time with your kids than you do. We hear the hallways, and sometimes the lowdown goes on right after school, whether they skip school or whatever. You would be so amazed. Even that little good girl. You know how many good girls are caught in the bathroom?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
oh yeah.
The good smart girl.
We know. We were in the bathroom when we were young. Like, what you mean? Do we know how many?